They say your home is your castle. But what if someone tried to build a shopping mall right in the middle of your backyard? Sounds crazy, right? Like something out of a movie where the bad guys wear expensive suits and smile while stealing everything that's not nailed down. That's what I thought too, until it happened to me. One day I was living a quiet life on a piece of land my family had owned for generations. The next, I came back to find bulldozers, cement trucks, and a giant sign that read, "Pleasant Vista Galleria, coming soon." The best part? No one had asked me. Not a single call, not even a note on the fence. Just cranes, noise, and a whole lot of nerve. And at the center of it all? Brenda McTavish, Karen with a capital K, the kind of person who thinks a clipboard gives her control over the world. She didn't just cross the line. She tried to erase it completely. But here's the part she didn't see coming. The land was mine. All of it. And by the time I was done, I didn't just take it back. I turned their little empire into my biggest win. My family's land wasn't just dirt and trees. It was a piece of our story. We called it Blackwood Creek. 100 acres of open fields, tall oak trees that had been standing longer than anyone alive, and a quiet little stream that twisted through the hills like it had a mind of its own. My great-grandfather built a stone wall around the edge, not to keep people out, but to mark something that mattered. Over the years, we didn't touch much of it. We let the grass grow wild, let the birds nest where they pleased. It was peaceful, the kind of place where you could actually hear yourself think. I grew up knowing every turn of that creek and every sound it made after a storm. We didn't build houses. We didn't pave roads. We just kept it safe. Even as the nearby town started growing, even when shiny new neighborhoods popped up on the edge, Blackwood Creek stayed the same. Untouched. Untamed. Ours. And that's what made it so hard to watch what happened next. Because when people who don't understand something try to take it, they don't just steal land. They ruin what it stands for. At first, the HOA over at Pleasant Vistas didn't bother me much. They stayed on their side, I stayed on mine. They had rules about lawn colors and mailbox heights, but none of that reached me across the old stone wall. That changed the day Brenda McTavish took over. Or, as she liked to be called, President McTavish. She was the type who talked like she was always in a meeting, even when she was yelling about dandelions. She had this way of smiling at you like she was doing you a favor, even while threatening to fine you for something that wasn't her business. It started small. A letter about some wildflowers near the wall, called them unregulated weeds that ruined the neighborhood's look. Then it was the leaves from my trees falling onto their sidewalk. After that, she started talking about how my land looked neglected and how it might be better used for community purposes. That's when I knew something was off. Brenda wasn't just a stickler for rules. She wanted control. And she saw my land not as mine, but as the next part of her little empire. It didn't take long for Brenda and her board to push things further. One day it was a letter about weeds. The next, it was landscapers showing up trying to trim bushes on my side of the wall, without asking. They claimed they were just helping keep the neighborhood clean. I told them to get off my property. They came back with clipboards. Then came the notes, handwritten complaints about the grass being too long near the shared view, even though the only thing they were sharing was a nerve. Someone from their side even tried to say the creek running through my land was a community water feature, that it should be accessible to all residents. I nearly laughed when I heard that one. But the real kicker was when I saw a copy of their newsletter. Brenda had started calling my land the undeveloped blight at HOA meetings, said it dragged down property values, called it an eyesore. It was clear what she was doing, trying to paint my land as wasted space, like it didn't belong to anyone, like it was just waiting to be put to better use. That's when I knew this wasn't just petty anymore. This was a setup. I had to leave town for a few months. It wasn't a vacation, just work overseas. Before I left, I made sure everything on the land was taken care of. A friend was checking in on the place. Nothing out of the ordinary. I figured maybe Brenda and the HOA would send another complaint or two while I was gone, but nothing serious. Then one day I got an email with drone photos attached. I thought it was a mistake. I zoomed in. My heart dropped. There were bulldozers tearing through the north side of Blackwood Creek. Trees gone. Ground ripped open. Cement being poured. Crane. Construction workers in hard hats like they owned the place. It wasn't some cleanup or small project. They were building something big. I flew back as fast as I could. As I drove toward the edge of the land, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The quiet road I knew was now a gravel path filled with trucks. The air smelled like diesel and sawdust. And then there it was, a massive steel skeleton going up. Right in the middle of my property. My trees, my soil, my land, turned into a construction site. I didn't just feel violated. I felt invaded. And worst of all, nobody had warned me. They knew I was gone, and they used it. I walked into the Pleasant Vista's HOA office like a man who just found strangers building a house in his living room. Brenda was sitting behind this oversized desk like she was running a country, not a neighborhood. She smiled like she'd been expecting me, then hit me with the fakest concern I've ever heard. "Mr. Harrison, there seems to be a small misunderstanding about your property lines." Misunderstanding? There were bulldozers on my land, Brenda. Foundations. Steel beams. This wasn't a mix-up. This was a takeover. She started name-dropping some company called Pleasant Developments, Inc., like it made the whole thing legal. I asked to see proof, and she waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "Old deeds can be tricky," she said. "The ownership is a bit ambiguous." That was her word. Ambiguous, as if a century's worth of clear paperwork suddenly didn't count because she wanted to play developer. That's when I stopped being surprised and started getting ready for war. My first lawyer was fine for stuff like fence disputes and writing stern letters. But this wasn't that. This was someone building a mall on my land and pretending it was a mix-up. I needed someone who didn't just know the law. I needed someone who enjoyed using it like a weapon. That's when I found Arthur. He was older, grumpy, and didn't waste words. But when I told him what happened, he leaned back in his chair, smiled like he'd just found buried treasure and said, "They didn't just build on your land. They gave you the kind of leverage money can't buy." He laid out a plan that sounded crazy at first. Don't stop them. Let them keep building. Let them pour every dollar into the concrete, the steel, the glass, because when it was done, when they thought they'd won, that's when we'd hit them. Arthur didn't just smell blood. He smelled lawsuits, headlines, and a payday big enough to shake their whole world. And I trusted him. Because from the way he talked, this wasn't just about getting even. This was about making sure they'd never do it to anyone else again. While they were busy building their shiny new mall, Arthur and his team were digging. Not in the ground, into records, permits, signatures, anything they could get their hands on. We didn't yell. We didn't make threats. We just quietly built a mountain of proof. At the county office, we found zoning changes that were rushed through with barely any notice. The environmental reports looked like someone had scribbled them out during lunch. And one of the land transfer forms? It had a signature from a guy who retired 10 years ago. Arthur called in a handwriting expert, just to be sure. Yep, totally fake. Meanwhile, we got our hands on minutes from HOA meetings. Brenda was bragging about future plans for my land before a single permit had even been filed. She thought she was being clever. But Karen had overplayed her hand like it was Vegas on a bad day. She promised the developers my land like it was hers to give away. And now, we had the receipts. Every shady corner they tried to cut was about to become a brick in the case we were building, one that would crush them. The day of the grand opening felt like the perfect setup. Blue skies, cameras rolling, and Brenda standing front and center like she'd just crowned herself Queen of Pleasant Vistas. She was wearing this shiny green suit, the exact color of money, and smiling like she'd already spent her bonus. What she didn't know was that every step she took that morning was walking her straight into a trap we'd been setting for months. At 9 a.m. sharp, process servers started handing out thick legal packets like party favors. One went to the mall's shiny new management office. Another found Brenda just as she was about to give a live interview. You could see the moment it hit her. Her face dropped, and she tried to keep smiling, but her hands were shaking. Cameras caught every second. Within minutes, phones were ringing off the hook. Developers, lawyers, HOA board members. No one knew what hit them. Some stores that were supposed to open that day turned off the lights and locked up before lunch. The mall wasn't just in legal trouble. It was frozen. Everything they built, everything they poured into this place was now sitting on land that didn't belong to them. And we had all the proof. They thought it was their big day. Turned out it was mine. After the grand opening crash landed, things went downhill fast. For them. The mall, which was supposed to be the crown jewel of Pleasant Vistas, turned into a billion-dollar ghost town overnight. Stores shut down before they ever really opened. Tenants backed out. Investors panicked. And the developers? They realized they'd spent a fortune building something they didn't legally own. The HOA, which had backed all of this, completely fell apart. Their budget was wiped out by legal fees and debt. Meetings turned into shouting matches. Brenda's portrait, which used to hang in their office, quietly disappeared. But it didn't stop there. The evidence we found, fake signatures, shady emails, backdoor deals, caught the attention of people way above our pay grade. A full-on investigation followed, and Brenda ended up in court. She tried to act calm, tried to blame everyone else. But the facts didn't care about her excuses. When the guilty verdict hit, she finally broke. That money-green suit she loved so much didn't look so powerful under courtroom lights. The woman who tried to steal a legacy walked out in handcuffs. And just like that, the queen of the HOA lost her throne, her mall, and her freedom, while I got it all back. In the end, they had no good options left. They couldn't tear them all down. That would cost even more. And they couldn't keep it, because every inch of it sat on land they didn't own. So they did the one thing they swore they'd never do. They came to me. At first, they tried to offer me a lowball deal, hoping I'd be desperate or tired. Arthur just laughed and slid them a copy of the land deed, the mall's market value, and our legal bill. After a few more rounds of painful meetings, they finally caved. The whole mess, the land, the buildings, everything, was sold to a new, legit property group for just over $1 billion. But here's the best part. Before that deal could happen, Pleasant Developments had to sell me the mall structure for basically nothing, just to clean up their own disaster. In the end, they had to pay me to take their $1 billion mistake off their hands. Once the dust settled, I walked away with my name on every line, my bank account full, and their empire in ruins. That's what real payback looks like. They built it, but I owned it. Every last brick. After everything, I didn't go out and buy a mansion or a sports car. I bought peace. I used part of the money to fix what was left of Blackwood Creek, cleaned up the land, brought back the trees they tore down, and turned it into a private nature preserve. No concrete, no meetings, just quiet. I also set up a fund to help people fighting the same kind of mess I went through, folks getting pushed around by greedy developers or power-hungry boards. And I bought a simple house by the ocean. No HOA in sight. My dogs run wherever they want, and I sleep like I haven't in years. I'm not just rich. I'm free. And every time I pass by what used to be Brenda's mall, I smile. Not because of the money, but because I know it's mine, and she can't touch any of it. Looking back, it still feels unreal sometimes. How a Karen with a capital K thought she could take what wasn't hers and turn it into her empire. How she called my land an undeveloped blight while dreaming up shopping centers and oil paintings of herself. How she wore that ridiculous suit, the exact color of money, like it made her untouchable. But the truth is, none of that protected her from reality. And in the end, she built her dream mall right into her own downfall. If there's anything this whole mess taught me, it's this. Never let anyone push you off what's yours. Stand your ground even when they laugh at you or tell you you're wrong. Keep every document. Write everything down. And most importantly, have a lawyer who doesn't blink when the fight gets ugly. Because sometimes, the people who think they're too powerful to lose are the ones who fall the hardest.